Welcome to FP Executive. I'm John Turley-Yurt, and I'm here today with Paul Facella, who's written an interesting new book with a provocative title, Everything I Know About Business I Learned at McDonald's. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, John. Good to be here.
Thank you very much for coming. You have a very interesting career. You worked in New York State for McDonald's. You grew up in McDonald's, it seems, by reading this book, and you learned a lot about franchises, about leadership, about quality control, and you have a great story to tell about the whole McDonald's history. Now, in Canada, of course, we know the McDonald's franchise very well, and it is a company that some people have sort of raised issues about lately. It's always in the news, but it's one that people have an opinion about. In this book, though, you talk about, again, leadership issues. Can you tell me why you decided to write this?
Sure. When I had a 34-year career with McDonald's. I walked in when I was 16 and left when I was 50, and had a wonderful time there and learned an awful lot about business and about life. And I was there at some of the wonderful times when Ray Kroc was alive and the business was really booming, and we were kind of new. So it was a lot of fun to be there at that particular time on that. Last 8 years I've been consulting, and I have a consulting business, and we've been consulting a number of organizations, large and small, public and private, government, and privately held. And again and again, people kept referring back to, tell me about how you did at McDonald's, or tell you, and I kept obviously using, that's what I learned. And it dawned on me, because I'd be writing things down, I had some notes, let me put a book together. And I did it for that, and I also did it because I wanted to thank the McDonald's system for what it did for me and thousands of others that prospered either as a licensee, as a supplier, or a company person. And that was my goal.
Well, I think that people can learn a lot from this book. I know that when I read it, it seemed, for example, the importance of bathrooms and keeping them clean. Can you talk a little bit about how important that was to the franchise?
McDonald's built an incredible culture that I believe is absolutely unique in the franchising business. Ray Kroc was just an incredible individual. He's a salesman.
He's the founder.
He was outgoing. He actually, the McDonald brothers had a store in San Bernardino, California.
I see. Okay.
And Ray was a multi-mixer salesman.
All right.
And they were using more multi-mixers than anybody else. So the kind of guy he was, I got to figure this out. So he goes down there and sees this business and says, immediately, this could be duplicated. This can be replicated. And he started an arrangement with the McDonald brothers, eventually buying them out and taking it over. In 1955, when Ray was 55 years old, he basically opened his first McDonald's, and the system started from there.
Right.
So that's kind of how it grew from that particular point.
And so the bathrooms, the key point.
Ray was concerned that in the 1950s, a 15-cent hamburger, how good could it be?
Right.
So he was just fastidious about the cleanliness of the location and how it was kept up. So bathrooms are extremely important. There's a great story in there. I got a bunch of stories in there. One Saturday, Ray brought a toothbrush from home and took a mop wringer, put it in the sink, and took a toothbrush and started cleaning out the holes in the mop wringer. Fred Turner, who is quoted heavily in the book, and Fred was the inside to Ray's outside character. And Fred was the person that really put the systems and procedures together that really grew McDonald's system. He became president, CEO, and is still this day active in McDonald's. And Fred told me that story. We were sitting down interviewing for the book. He said, I couldn't believe that's how meticulous he was, but he set the standard. And there's a chapter in the book, as you know, called Leading by Example is one of the principles. Ray always led by example, and that culturally was part of the system.
So this I don't want to sort of spend too much time on it, but in terms of business success, the strategy was, in order to make the 15-cent hamburger sell, it was very important to have a facility that people wanted to return to. So you kept the bathroom spotless, you kept the restaurant spotless, so that the whole experience was one of feeling that this was something that was going to be around for a long time, a place you wanted to be?
That's exactly it, John. He wanted a first-class operation you could take a family to that was ethical, did it right, was sanitized, and had high-quality food at reasonable prices. That was the formula.
Interesting. Now, there's also a lot in here about people learning how to do business within the McDonald's franchise. Now, you started obviously when you were very young. Can you tell me, did you start on the grill, or did you work all through the store?
Actually, I started in the back by the grill. We were toasting buns at the time.
Right.
And then I graduated to the grill man, which was the premier position in there. So, and there's a lot about that growing up and in the McDonald's system and how important operations are and the position. We always challenge ourselves to be the best. So, yes, I was a grill man.
You were a grill man. And you learned from that, I think, and I think there's been thousands of others. I mean, there's Hamburger University. You've learned about standards, how to really make an operation work, but also it's the cultural aspect of this. Translating that to other franchises across the country as this was being built. What do you think was the key to really getting that culture to grow out of, starting from one store to 2 to 3 to 4 or 5?
Ray made a comment. Well, two answers to that. One, Ray made a comment early on. We take the hamburger business more seriously than anybody else. A lot of people don't know this, but for over 30 years, the graduates of McDonald's Hamburger University, after they graduate from that and all the programs that went before that, it's the equivalency of 42 college credits.
Oh, wow.
I bring that up because that's how seriously we took the business.
That's important.
And the second piece is we were very selective about the franchisees that we brought into the system. And that helped to weed out the people that couldn't do it right. We only had the best.
Well, that's interesting. So if and again, I picked this up in the book as well. I mean, Ray Kroc wasn't out for a quick buck. He wanted to build a long-term franchise operation. Weeding out those people. Well, I mean, when you looked at a potential franchisee, what was the thing that stood out? What made them someone you wanted to work with? Everybody, as you can imagine, is different. But the ideal candidate was someone that was already successful, usually managing people. Oh, okay.
And that could be advertising, that could be merchandise, it could be some. But managing people, usually used to being on their feet for a period of time, not necessarily behind a desk. Those were the people that usually were committed and made good franchisees. But I put retired policemen, I put retired firemen in there, I put advertising executives in there, and so there's no real formula, but managing people and having a success in that and a desire to be the best and high standards has always been something that we look for.
So for someone today who is for example, looking, maybe they have an operation and want to get into franchising, one of the lessons from this book is perhaps you have to look for people who are good with people, and also the high standard, the high quality, the commitment to that. Would you say that's correct?
Absolutely. Clearly, you have to enjoy working with people. And when we talk about people, I think we're kind of settling in on the crews and the staff, but the public as well,
right.
Obviously. So the interaction of people, the relationships that you build. Another chapter in the book talks about relationships. Those are very important.
Customer service. I mean, it was you have stores that are bright and open and. Currently, many of them are being redesigned with the flat screen TVs and fireplaces in them. Very, very nice. The smiling McDonald's staff person is always seen as sort of the iconic image. Customer service. What was the particular message that you learned growing up through this company that you think other businesses might take away from that?
There was an obsession. Obsession is the word. It was used by many people I interviewed about taking care of the customer. And I think one of the ways in which that was really driven in the culture of McDonald's is that all of us, whatever level you were, from Ray Kroc to Fred Turner, were not afraid when we were in a store, take off our jacket and help out. That was absolutely what was expected of everyone. Everyone that occupied the CEO's position came up through the ranks, had to run a store, had to run a region, had to close the store, had to know operations. So there was an obsession around operations. Few organizations, I don't think the president of General Motors has ever worked an assembly line for any length of time. Everybody understood what that store is like, and we made that a focus, and that was an obsession.
Well, the obsession came through. I remember there's one nice anecdote in here, many great anecdotes, but one in particular that stood out to me was the milkshake machine, and that is there was a new milkshake machine that was being brought forward, and there was some resistance from the franchise owners. The suggestion was it was too complicated to sort of put together. Can you tell me how McDonald's dealt with that initial resistance?
Yeah, it was a typical McDonald's solution to something. The mantra of "we're never satisfied, we can always improve." That new machine came out. The old machine had about 28 parts. The new machine had like 140 parts, and some of them were very small. So the franchisees were very concerned, we're losing the parts, this is ridiculous, why'd you make us buy it, et cetera, et cetera. So the president of the company at the time, Ed Renzi, went to Hamburg University, where part of that lab, they have a lab, and you put the equipment together and you learn the maintenance and repair on it. He said, I put a challenge out, and I forget exactly what the reward was, I'm sure it was stock, how fast you can put the machine together blindfolded.
Blindfolded, right.
And they ended up, the record I think was 7 minutes to put it together blindfolded. Well, that kind of ended it. But it's a typical challenge. We measured everything. Performance was about measurement. And those two tie-ins are very important for anybody in business.
Now, you bring up the issue of metrics. I know that McDonald's has also played a very important role in communities across North America in terms of its social responsibility. Was there any attempt to do metrics on that? I mean, in Toronto, there's Ronald McDonald House, which helps children who are ill. How did you measure giving back to the community? Because McDonald's has been known for that for years. Yeah. Was there a way that you approached that?
I couldn't tell you that there was a specific measurement of that, but it started from Ray Kroc, and Ray was a very giving person. It was never about the money with Ray Kroc. It was never, and that's one of the distinctions in this culture. The company has never been sold.
Right.
Both owner-operators, Fred has been there for 53 years and still has an office. Ray worked till the day he died. You take the four largest competitors, two of which started earlier than McDonald's. Three of them were out in 13 years, and one was out in 4 years. Right. They sold out. So it wasn't about the quick buck, and it was about giving back to the community and being part of the community. And that also goes back, John, to the franchisee, that ideally we wanted that franchisee living in that area, knowing his or her neighbors and customers. And so it became just an outgrowth of that. Wow, if I'm in a neighborhood, I'm going to give the Little League, et cetera, and then Mason's Thanksgiving Day Parade and Ronald McDonald House and hundreds of other philanthropic things.
Now, there's a great many lessons here. I know we're running out of time, but I'd like to focus. I would like you to tell our viewers what's the main lesson if they're running other businesses, retail businesses or managing departments, you think that they can take from this book. What is that lesson? Yeah,
I'd say if I had to put it down to one, it would be team.
Okay.
TEAM, the we versus I. I know it's been used before. You learn very quickly in a restaurant business how important teamwork is, because from let's not even get into McDonald's, but the dishwasher in a regular restaurant versus the waitress, everybody is equally important, and that's how it's viewed, that the team members are all equally important. And if you treat them like that and you reward them, recognition is one of the 7 chapters in there, and how you can reward people for their performance in that. And you build a team where the team really becomes a very important factor. And in the book, I talked about it I talked about it in the restaurant, but then I talked about it fast forward 20 years later when I was running a $600 million region for McDonald's, and I had 10 department heads that sat in a room. It was the same team process there as when we had our huddle in a store before we were going to get a lunch rush. Okay, some of the specifics were different, and the age was different, but it was no different. Building a team is extremely important in business, and I don't think enough people give it the depth of time that it really needs.
Well, I think that particular lesson impressed me. The egalitarian aspect of McDonald's, I think, is really fascinating. How people all work on an equal plane, regardless of where you stand in the corporation. And I think that's one aspect of the culture that really struck me, that I learned something about McDonald's and about business from reading this book. So you should read this book too. Paul Facella, thank you very much for coming to see us today.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.